Is there a Leonardo da Vinci in everyone? Is the question for today on the podcast. The interesting thing about this question is just much more than something that is interesting to discuss. But what you believe about the answer to this question says a lot about you, and it also indicates your most deeply held beliefs around human nature, human ability, human potential, and also how you treat other people. Now, I don't want to throw Da Vinci onto a pedestal. He's just a good example. And I'll tell you why. Da Vinci is famous for being a multi-potentialite, what they called a Renaissance man or Renaissance person, someone who was very distinguished across a very broad range of interests and fields and areas, from engineering to dental to light optics. Of course, he was an incredible painter, drawer. He wrote plays. He was all over it, and he made discoveries that were centuries ahead of time in multiple different fields and industries. And what most fascinates me about Da Vinci, if you've heard me talk about him before on the podcast, is his obsession with the interconnectedness of things and his focus on interpreting nature. And it's they're very big, powerful concepts. The other interesting thing about Da Vinci is that if he was alive in this day and age, he would have been an absolute outcast. He was homosexual. He was vegetarian. He didn't have a formal education. Yet he's the most diverse genius of all time that we're aware of. And even more crazy, something else that really stands out to me about Da Vinci, he wasn't so keen on sharing his work. He seemed to do most things for what I would call an audience of none. He wasn't boastful and looking to show everyone all this stuff. Maybe he was afraid to share it, for all I know. But from his thousands and thousands of pages of notes that have been found from him, which is where we get most of his most of our insights and understanding about him, because it's been locked up. Because he never shared it that broadly. It seems that he was just lost in curiosity. And curiosity, as the great Gilly pointed out to me some time ago, that the root word in the word curiosity is a Latin word, which is care. It's caring about things, caring enough to go into them, to dig out the truth. And that's the most powerful form of learning. In this film I was watching the other week called Summer Hill, thanks Taryn if you're listening for the recommendation. Beautiful film about education and what education actually means. They say that when children decide they want to learn, they go like rockets. And Da Vinci really emphasizes that. He shows what incredible learners we all are, if we do believe that he wasn't an outlier. Now, it's easy and convenient to believe he was an outlier because of the endowment effect, right? This thing we love putting sort of high achievers on pedestals because it gives us an excuse not to do the work that they did to get there. If they just have amazing ability, we look at ourselves and just say we don't have that and we never go there. Now, I believe at this point in time that every person is a Da Vinci, or that there is one inside them. Not the exact same person as Leonardo, who lived in the 1500s, in a time where in Florence he was allowed to be himself, to be that outcast and to be alternate and go down his own rabbit holes. I believe there is an unknowable potential. I really do. I think that people are naturally multi-potentialites. That is, they're not one fixed thing. And there's very interesting and indirect ways in which we show that very diverse human nature, I think, in our work. There's plenty of examples. What I do believe is that kind of deep down reality has really been locked away. I think the way culture has evolved in the last couple of centuries, the way we've set up, modern economies and societies, and the way, obviously, we perpetuate culture out of our education systems, I think it locks it all up. I really do. We get obsessed with the wrong values, I believe, most people, and we get distracted from what really makes sense to do in our lives, and we get distracted for a long time, and some people die distracted. In fact, I think probably most people die distracted, never having really lived. Creativity is not something that some people have and some people don't have. And creativity, you can almost get very spiritual about it. It reflects, we are just smaller parts of a grander pattern. And I think Da Vinci would have agreed with me here. And you reflect that. You are part of nature, which means that you have this creativity in you and it wants to be expressed. And all the pain and fatigue you encounter in life is the tension associated with not expressing that creativity for its intended purpose. And we're doing all these, we're our own problem. We do all these counterintuitive things to lock that away. And it is rubbish. It is rubbish. So I wanted to reflect on this today because this is, I'm thinking more about this podcast. It's a new year and the role that this plays and what this is meant to do. And I think that those are the doors I want to open, the doors that help people realize this creative contribution in them, the way that someone like Da Vinci was able to. There are some common pitfalls in modern life, and I'm not immune to them. We become overcome by ego, and we seek status for its own sake. It is a recurring pitfall. It's part of being human, especially in those pockets of society where we seek achievement. We so often zoom in on our goals and lose perspective. And the example of that I give is in a soccer game, you don't just try at any cost to win the ball, or at tennis, you don't swing as hard as possible with the serve. You're trying to win the ball off an opponent so that you can achieve something more significant, which is have possession, which is so you can score. But when you get too carried away and you chase too hard trying to win the ball off the opposition, sometimes you leave your defense vulnerable. There are right and wrong times to go and win the ball. In life, there are right and wrong times to go for a promotion, to accept more money, to take on a goal, to pursue something. But when we get so caught in, we zoom in and we missing out on the big picture. And human attention has so many limits that we forget the most significant and important things on a regular basis. And what I think I hope to do and why this is a daily podcast, because I think we should be committed to this on a daily basis of remembering and reflecting on reality, on what really matters. And I do hope, and I hope this continues to be the case, that this podcast and the philosophy, and that's all I have, a philosophy that I espouse, comes from a place of calm, comes from a place of acceptance. Because at the core of all this, and I think Da Vinci, who always accepted jobs but then wouldn't follow through on them because he was always chasing his latest creative impulse. I think again, there is this idea that at no point do you put yourself through pain or in an unenviable now for the sake of some vague future goal. Perhaps that idea which is so frequently called delayed gratification. You are in a great moment now, and any future achievement must be on the terms of an enjoyable present. That is something I fundamentally believe, because if you love the process, if you love the joy of doing whatever you're doing and you do it for an audience of none, then there is less pressure on the outcomes, which frees you to achieve greater outcomes, to be more creative. I think there's something we learn from many people, least of all Da Vinci. Creativity and contribution comes from a place of freedom. When people are free, they can express themselves with a broader set of potentialities. The last thing, which I think is so interesting when I reflect on Da Vinci and his notes and what I've learned from him and reading about him, is that he found that the real currency to pursue in your life was not monetary wealth, but wisdom.